would like to welcome everyone again, and I just want to introduce the panel once again and give, just so that we know where every person comes from and what the background is. To my right, I have His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Salem. He's a former Minister of Communications and Information Technology from Egypt, and he's got a lot of background specialization in infrastructure planning, among other aspects. Then I have Professor Jianli. He's an education research specialist from ZTE Corporation, which is a provider of telecom equipment in about 160 countries and operations. Next, I have Engineer Baydoun, the National Broadband Network Program Director in Ministry of ICT in Jordan. Okay, and next to him I have Dr. Omar Al-Jarrah, who is VP for Jordan University of Science and Technology in Jordan, and he also works closely consultation for the Ministry of Education in Jordan as well. I also have Mr. Qasem Al-Khateeb, who's Managing Director for Queen Rania Center for Education Technology. That's basically part of the Ministry of Education here in Jordan, and Dr. Al-Ghamdi, of course, from Saudi Arabia. Welcome all to the panel. Just a very quick introduction about what this panel is about. We are talking about ICT in education, and specifically about the infrastructure side of ICT in education. And although we all know that there's valuable lessons that could be learned and may be learned from best practices around the world, but I think everyone agrees that it is hard for us to come up with a single formula of success or a single formula that really applies to every situation in every country. There are many variables, there are many challenges that should be taken into consideration, and all for the benefit of how to integrate ICT in education. The significant challenges that policymakers in general, and planners, and educators, and administrators, and all the other stakeholders need to consider partly include, education policy and planning, infrastructure, language and content, capacity building, financing, etc., etc., and there's a lot more. And the idea of the panel is to basically shed some light on these aspects, all of them, based on the backgrounds and expertise of my guests here. So I'm going to start with a discussion, and Dr. Al-Ghamdi here gave us some idea about what in general infrastructure could include. But my question goes, and I'm going to start with Professor Jiao. In your point of view, when we say infrastructure in education, what does that include in your point of view?
Thank you very much for your question. In my mind, when we mention the infrastructure in education or educational infrastructure, people always think about the computers and internet access, etc. But I think it's not enough. It is not enough because providing computers or access to internet to students and teachers alone does not automatically increasing students' performance and their achievement and the education quality, etc. So I think maybe we have to think about the software part of the infrastructure. For example, the students and the teachers' information literacy or their digital competency or something like that. Maybe that in the past few years, educational field, there is a very important movement about the open educational resources. There are lots of resources provided to students, to everybody. The world is open. Everybody can learn. But the result and the performance is not good enough because the people need to know how to learn, how to use this kind of materials. So in my eyes, the infrastructure of the education, or we can say educational infrastructure, is not only computer and internet access, but also the ICT policies from the different levels, national levels or local levels. And the teacher and students' information literacy and competency, maybe we can say the new culture of learning and the participatory learning methodologies, or we can say new pedagogy. If we provided templates or iPad to students, the teachers and students have to know how to use it to learn, to help them to learn. So it's the new education theory and pedagogy did not provide this kind of guidance to teachers and students. So in my eyes, the educational infrastructure, not only the computers and internet access, but also the new culture of learning, the students' performance, students' literacy and their competency, etc.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more than connectivity and PCs. Dr. Jarrah, how do you see it? Anything else that goes under infrastructure in ICT?
Thank you, Batoul. I think when we talk about ICT infrastructure, we are referring to all resources and tools that are used to create, transform, store, process, and present knowledge to the students or to all stakeholders. And I see the ICT infrastructure as an enabler that provide, that help any institution or ministry to achieve its mission. Also, for all practical means, we can look at ICT infrastructure as a carrier that can provide or help the country to achieve its future vision.
So ICT infrastructure is an enabler, and it's a carrier. We hear a lot of challenges that actually we've heard this morning in the ministerial session. Most of the presentations discussed infrastructure in general, and most of them, one way or another, also presented the sort of challenges, the different challenges that face such infrastructure. My question to you, Your Excellency, what's your opinion? What sort of challenges really face the education sector, or all different sectors in general, but as an enabler, what sort of challenges really face this infrastructure?
Thanks, Batoul, but let me give first a piece of information and then a definition, and then I will answer your question.
Okay.
Broadband, which is the thing is carried by the infrastructure, and according to the World Bank, the 10% increase in broadband penetration will lead to a 1.25% growth in the GDP in all countries. It is 1.21 exactly in the developed countries, and the MENA region is about 1.38 growth in GDP. So this is of a high importance to encourage and to support the broadband penetration. Another piece of information, broadband in Europe until 2015 will deliver an increase in jobs by 2 million jobs. So this is a piece of information. The definition is the stakeholders. When we are speaking about the infrastructure, there are 3 stakeholders. We have the government or the state, we have the regulator, and we have the service providers. Mm-hmm. They are all one thing. There is no government in the world which likes to make its own infrastructure by itself. It must be a full partnership between the government, the regulator, and the service providers. To answer your question, Batoul, I think there are 4 challenges for the ICT infrastructure. Mm-hmm. The first thing, which is the most precious thing in the world, which is the frequencies, the bandwidth. It's the most precious thing on earth. So the government should make these bandwidths available. So the first challenge is the bandwidth or the frequency availability. And this is the role of the governments to make it available. And of course, I know technology is changing. Technology is giving us more relief in bandwidth, but still bandwidth availability is one of the most important challenges. The second challenge is the liberalization of the ICT market. This is done in the developed countries, but in the MENA region, still we have a lot of countries which is favoring the incumbent companies, which is the competition is not 100% fair. So liberalization of the ICT market is a main challenge in the MENA region. The third thing is the regulatory management. You see now, in 2 years' time, the mobile business, which is now, we have mobile phones equals the number of the people in the world. We have 6 billion mobile phones. We have 6 billion inhabitants in the world. So the mobile business is the biggest business ever. But in 2 years' time, the voice will not have any meaning. The information will have the meaning. So it is not just regulation for voice penetration, it is just a regulation for the data and for the information, and the success and failure of telco is related to effective regulatory management. And the fourth challenge is the risk management itself, because the government will invest in the infrastructure and then the technology changes. So somebody there, well, the government is the best one to have this risk to invest in the infrastructure. So those are the four challenges. And then what is it related to the decision makers to do? Decision makers have to do 7 things. Number one, the state political support. You know, broadband or the infrastructure of the ICT is an extremely important to us. But to the rest of the people in our countries or the MENA region, it comes 4th or 5th priority. We have the food, we have the gas, we have many other problems. So we need the political state support, and this is very important to have it. Number 2 is culture building, to educate the people to think of the broadband as a business, as a way of making business, not a way of leisure or having fun. The third thing is demand stimulation. The government has to make stimulation for the demand to make the market vital and viable. The fourth thing is the regulatory framework, and as I said, it has to be dynamic to cope with the technology change. Number 5 is private sector involvement. Private sector has to be there, has to be in all the steps of the infrastructure building and design. The sixth thing is the beneficiary definitions. We have to define the beneficiaries that will be on board of the broadband market. Last thing but not least, broadband infrastructure has to be a national project. It couldn't be a normal project, it has to be a national. All the efforts has to come together to make it success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to talk a bit about the national broadband network in a while. We're going to get to that. It's because it's really an important thing. I'm just going to ask Dr. Ghamdi here a question. Basically, based on what Dr. Salem has just said, how do you see from your experience in Saudi Arabia in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of, do you see the last mile? Because I know in Jordan there are several issues related to the infrastructure and the last mile and all of that. How is the situation in Saudi Arabia in terms of connectivity, in terms of the data centers, in terms of, because all of these can be looked at as part of the infrastructure, and if not implemented completely or fully, they could really pose very difficult challenges. So how is it in your point of view, Dr. Ghamdi?
Yeah, in terms of the data centers, we don't have problems. It is actually well established, and the architecture is very solid. Of course, it goes through various enhancements. Now we are enhancing by introducing the cloud, so that within 2 years we move completely to the cloud. But other than that, everything is excellent. But in terms of the connectivity, about 80% of our schools we are okay right now, and for the major directorates and for the headquarters also we are okay. But for about 20% of our schools, the connectivity has problems where it's either not enough bandwidth or not very reliable at all times. Some of our schools, about 2,000 of our schools, the only means that we can reach to them right now is through satellites, and we did that. But you know, it's not the best option. It's, because the satellite, first of all, it's expensive. Second of all, it's limited bandwidth if you want it at a reasonable cost. So we have 20% challenge as in terms of the quantity. Moreover, now we are moving towards e-learning. You know, e-learning, if you want to deploy it from central location, it will eat up a lot of bandwidth. If you want to make it very effective and efficient, that probably the best thing, if you can have at least to the large schools have DIA access rather than through DSL or through the broadband, and that is with our discussions with the telecom, it will take about 4 to 5 years to move to DIA to all schools with the enough bandwidth that will support the e-learning. So it's a struggle, but we have to make it. So
it says, great. Dr. Jarrah, is it going back to the national broadband network and again the challenges? Do you agree that building a broadband network is a national project? It's a government project. Is it something that should be worked on with the public-private partnership, or is it solely a government job?
Batoul, I just want to mention something before about the challenges, because in Jordan for sure we have different challenges, because the most important challenge is the budget and the finance in Jordan. And then because management and maintenance is consuming around 70% of the budget in most institutions. Therefore, this is the most important challenge in Jordan. Then connectivity. And when we talk about connectivity, we right now have around 700 schools connected to the broadband network. And so connectivity is still an issue. Availability of the systems, because without having or providing enough availability, you will lose the user trust and the system will collapse. Then the fourth or fifth challenge is the partnership, public-private partnership, which I believe without building this partnership, we cannot go forward in Jordan. And what I'm seeing in Jordan is that we succeeded at some point of time in bridging or reducing the gap between our ministries or universities and the international ones. However, during the last 5 or 6 years, this gap is starting picking up and widening. So I'm afraid that we have now to have good strategies in place and to monitor the execution of these strategies in order to go back on track. So I believe that without having a proper private-public partnership, we cannot achieve our goals.
Engineer Baydoun, you're basically specializing in the national broadband network in Jordan. I know the whole project, since it started in 2003, has gone to a certain distance, and then it had slowed down a bit, and then it had the different paces and different speeds, and where have we reached until now? What's the situation of the broadband network, of the NBN basically in Jordan, and how do you see it going ahead? As a main, at the end of the day, it is one of the main pillars of infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Batoul. Actually, what we have achieved so far, we have achieved around 30% of the NBN. We have connected around 700 schools, as Dr. Jarrah said, and about the infrastructure, in our infrastructure, we are using the fiber optics as a technology which is the best so far is being used. And we have laid either aerial, we have used two technologies in that, the duct fiber or aerial fiber, and we have around 1,700 kilometers of fiber optics all over Jordan. Actually, the schools we connected, we tried to be fair. We connected some in the south, some in the middle, and also some in the north region of Jordan. So far, the main problem we have is, again, the main actually challenge is, as Dr. Jarrah said, it's financing the project. So far, we have spent around 40 million JDs to implement 30% of the NBN. And now, but we finally got the approval of the cabinet to go ahead and move with the project, and we get approval to get around 30 million JDs to go ahead to build the rest of the infrastructure, also to connect some schools and some health entities. And the NBN in Jordan, we are not using it only for education system. We're also using it for the e-health and the e-government. As long as it's completely now the government responsibility, we might as well use it as an infrastructure for the health and for the e-government also. Actually, this is what we are planning, and after that, the next step after we finish the project within 2 years, hopefully we'll be able to finish the connecting the health entities and some of the schools in this phase. Phase 2 will be connecting the rest of the schools in Jordan, which will be around 3,000 schools.
Okay. And those schools that are actually connected, are they in full order in terms of connectivity, or are you facing any challenges in that as well?
Actually, from our side as NBN connectivity, we are playing the role. We are connecting the data center with the school, and we are dedicated 100 megabits per second for each school. The main problem is with the data center, and what the Ministry of Education is allocating the internet or the bandwidth or whatever problems they have in the data center. And actually, there are some problems which need to be resolved, as Dr. Jarrah said. A lot of money is spent in operation and maintenance of the data center and at schools also. The PCs, for example, at schools are very old, for example, they are not up to date. The data center needs a lot of money to be maintained and operated. And such problem of filtering system also, we have security system, we have problems. But those problems needs to be resolved with the Ministry of Education, and I think they are working on it right now to be resolved. But from our side, the bandwidth is open, and it's unfortunately the bandwidth utilization for the schools is around 10%, which is not at what we hope for to be utilized actually.
This is kind of controversial, I would say, because utilizing ICT in education, especially in the classroom and e-learning and all of that, is really, in a lot of cases, and especially when we talk about learning content, e-content, it's really, and the audio-video conferencing and all of that, it is bandwidth hungry, and so schools would need a lot of bandwidth. At the same time, there is always the issue of are we providing enough bandwidth? Are we providing reliable enough bandwidth? Because at the end of the day, if the reliability is not there, I think schools would start worrying about utilizing the solutions that they have due to that. I was going to ask Dr. Salem, what's the experience in Egypt in terms of bandwidth? And
Yeah, thanks, Batoul. In November 2011, the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology in Egypt issued the broadband strategy. It's called EMIS, and it has been done with the consultation of the World Bank and the Datacom company in Germany. That was the strategy. In 3 months' time from now, the implementation plan will start in Egypt, and it has 2 phases. The first phase will last 2 years. It will end at September 2015, and the investment is about $2.4 billion. The government will contribute by 20%. The 80% will be covered by the private sector. And the social objectives of this first implementation plan is 50% of the schools, hospitals, and youth centers will be supported by 25 megabits per second. I'm speaking about 20,000 schools. And 50% as well of the municipalities, the third level management, we call it villages and shiakhat, will be also supported by 25%, by 25 megabits per second at that time. The availability targets 75% of the houses. 75% of the houses will have the availability of 2 megabits per second bandwidths, with the same prices of a half a mega per second now. So the consumer at home will have 4 times the speed of the internet with the same price of today, which is more or less about $5 per month. So, and for the mobile availability, we'll have 98%, nearly 100% of Egypt will be covered by 3G. The penetration objectives will have 4.5 million houses will be supported by broadband. It's about 1/4 of the Egyptian houses, and about 8 million citizens will have broadband by mobile. So this is a collaboration.
2015.
2015, and this is a full collaboration between the government and the private sector. What do they need? They need a political support, as I said. They need a very clear implementation plan, competition framework, market study, and the first RFP will be issued on next August, so that they can contribute. So in conclusion, I can say broadband in Egypt is a successful experience. We know that we'll be able to do it, because broadband is no more a luxury. It's, by all means, it's a must. Thank you.
Interesting. Thank you. I'm going to go to a different topic here. Mr. Qasem Al-Khateeb, how do ministries of education make decisions to how and what to invest in terms of infrastructure, in terms of solutions, in terms of hardware, all of the needs for ministries of education in terms of technologies? How do they decide what is best for them, and to get the ICT in education going?
Excuse me, I'll speak in Arabic, Batoul.
Thank you very much, Batoul.
Before I answer the question or before I address the idea that you have raised, let me go back and forgive me regarding what was said by my colleagues, and let me reflect it on the Minister of Education in Jordan. Regarding the challenges, I am with Dr. Jarrah because the challenges, especially in the ICT area, are different from a country to another, because the ICT in all of its aspects is related to financing. Jordan, as you know, is our country with limited resources, especially in terms of the budget of the Ministry of Education that is located for the ICT. In Jordan, we depend directly, and especially in the Ministry of Education, on computer labs equipped with PCs. We have around 85,000 PCs distributed to our schools, which is 14 students per one computer. And it's a good ratio if we want to look at other countries in the world. Unfortunately, we have 20,000 computers that are broken. Whether it is Pentium free, so it's out of service, or with very limited capacities, or it's out for maintenance. Since 2010, or the late 2009, the schools of the Ministry of Education was not equipped with one PC. There is no financing due to the international or global economic crisis, which also included us. Regarding your question, I will go back to your question. Now, we are in the process of providing our schools with infrastructure, with the ICT based on the need, because you know there are many schools that are being established from a period to another, because there is an increased need for new schools, because we have an increasing number of students in order to provide our students with the best service. The planning in the Ministry of Education is based on the need, and in the Queen Rania Center, we are doing a survey every year regarding the new schools, or what are the new numbers of the students that are different from the previous years. And you know the circumstances which Jordan is witnessing because of the increasing number of Syrian students in our schools. After that, we report these needs to the Ministry of Education, and we ask the supply management to allocate a number or an amount in the budget in order to purchase these equipment or their accessories or whatever follows these computers from softwares and other things. After that, the bid will be decided, and unfortunately sometimes it is late from a time to another. Maybe until now we have a difficulty in choosing one vendor in order to cover the need in the schools, and the different schools which their needs were reported to the Ministry of Education. And after that, the equipment or the PCs will be purchased and distributed to schools. This is not the main point, Mrs. Batoul, in the issue of ICT in Jordan. We are suffering from a very big problem. Maybe other countries are not suffering, or other entities are not suffering in the same manner, which is maintenance. Since 2 years, we are depending on ourselves in the maintenance. We don't have a vendor company in order to sustain the maintenance of this equipment. Maybe the reason is due to when we started. Maybe because when we started in the ITG, you are the oldest partner, and you know our burdens in the Ministry of Education. I believe that when we started with confirmation, going from the visions of His Majesty King Abdullah, that there must be effective partnerships with the private sector. We hoped for that in the Ministry of Education. We did not depend on ourselves in the development of the e-contents or in the maintenance or the purchasing process, and we depended on the private sector in that. The Ministry of Education passed through a period which did not have any financing. So this partnership stopped, and we found ourselves out of this partnership with the private sector because of the lack of financing, and we could not sustain by ourselves these equipment, which led to this situation. In the ministry in 2013, we are looking at some of the grants that we had from outside Jordan. We thank them very much, and most of them were allocated for ICT. That's why in this year we are looking for 50,000 PCs for the schools, or to sign new contracts with the new private companies in order to cover the maintenance. We are looking forward new partnerships in the ICT area, and at last, let me say that the situation is good. And we don't say that the Minister of Education started very strong and then the strength became weaker. No, we are doing a lot that we can, a lot with more what we have, but the situation is entirely good.
شكرا دكتور غامدي. احنا the situation in Jordan is probably, as Mr. Khateeb mentioned, a lot to do with financial scarcity. The ministry in Saudi Arabia, the decisions made of how do you make the decisions to invest in infrastructure? Are there strategies that you have in place, long-term strategies for the overall thing, or is it an annual thing that you do year by year? The decisions, do they go into countrywide or based on the requirements of each school or the directorates or districts and so on?
First of all, we have an ICT strategy that started 1.5 years ago, and it is planned to end at the end of 2015. And probably it will spill over to a little bit of 2016. So we are going into the strategy, and each quarter we re-evaluate the strategy and probably update what is need to be updated. The second, how to invest, what to invest in. I think we don't go and say what infrastructure we need to put in place. I think that's the last thing that we should be asked. But first, what are the functions that we need to provide? And by having that list, we go and we prioritize, and we take them in first priority and then the after priority. And for each function or group of functions, we need to build system to do that. And for each system that you build, you see what is the best approach to so that it reaches to the final constituents, and based on that you build your system and you deploy it. From what has been said, I have introduced 5 or 6 of the systems just in the presentations. But for example, for the laboratories, laboratories at the school, the first priority is the secondary schools, and then the intermediate schools, and then the elementary schools, and then you take all the schools and see the schools that do not have any lab will be the first priority. Then after that, the schools with the machines that needs to be upgraded or replaced, that goes to the second, and so on. For the connectivity, of course, you need to go to all the schools. All the schools should be connected. That is bottom line. For the e-learning, I think there are some projects that we have in e-learning and developing the content, but as a full-fledged e-learning, we still did not begin the full-fledged. We have a pilot project that's going to start next September. Now it is in the preparation stage, so that the launch will be on September, and it will take 6 months so that we experience with the ecosystem and with the education system for the e-learning. And so in short, you need to prioritize what systems you need to to deploy, and then you need to evaluate what are the best solutions that you adopt and go and implement.
There's a couple of different models of applications of how to deploy, whether the infrastructure, the solution, how to utilize the overall setup of a combination of solutions and infrastructure of this. And I'm going to present a couple of ideas, and I would like to hear feedback from different points of view here. Professor Jiao, and you're in research and education. If we talk, for example, new PCs versus refurbished PCs, if we talk thin client versus fat client, if we talk deployments now in schools, for example, in classrooms, in several countries, there are this new trend of bring your own device to school, which requires obviously a lot of management within the classroom and within the network and all the stakeholders. How do you see all of that? What's your take on all of that?
Sorry. Thank you. Actually, in these days, ZTE just taking decisions to do some research about one-to-one teaching and learning. They try to provide some experimental zones to help the students to have the one-to-one. I mean, the one laptop per child, the models. But I think, there is no, actually, in my eyes, there is no best deployment models. Actually, the models we can say they have their own features and are suitable to different situations. Maybe last year when I visited Sweden, last March, when I was there, my friends told me that in Sweden there are totally 290 municipalities, and there are about 180 municipalities has been involved in one-to-one teaching in some way, in some way. So, but when I finished my visit, it's beginning of last April, and it was reported that there are more than 200 municipalities to be involved in this kind of things. So, in my eyes, it depends different situations. Maybe this kind of deployment model is suitable for one country or one area or one school. Maybe another one maybe is suitable for another situations. In China, I'm sorry, there are almost more than 95% K-12 schools are not allowed students to use their own mobile phone. Mm-hmm. But a lot of local educational authorities are eager to push and to launch their own one-to-one teaching project. Mm-hmm. So it's really funny things in my eyes. We have to think about the educational systems, not only machines, not only the provided the laptop or iPad to students. We will result in the students' wonderful performance. It will not be that way. So maybe we have to think about the situations. We take the different actions according to the specific budget and the education conditions, etc.
Engineer Baydoun, what's your take on that? Different connectivity models?
Connectivity models and actually, are you talking about connectivity between data centers and schools, or last mile solutions, or?
It's whatever it takes, actually. At the end of the day, we are talking about education as a country. So if both are affected, then what do you think, in your opinion, are best connectivity models, whether it's from the data-centered schools or the last mile or any other options? That is?
Actually, in our policy at the Ministry of ICT, our connectivity model is only using fiber optics between the data center up to the school, by which we can give the bandwidth is needed, because as long as education is developing, we need more and more demand on bandwidth. Right now, as I said before, we are dedicating 100 megabits per second per each school. But once they have video conferencing, once they have all curriculum are digitized and they have been used in schools, I think there will be more demand than that. That's the main policy. But in certain areas, the last mile solutions, where you find in rural areas especially, we need to have a wireless solutions, which is, of course, everybody or most people know that this way is cheaper, and there are some limitations on bandwidth and interferences and all that. But because it's mostly we have small schools where they do not demand high bandwidth, we have the wireless solution in that case.
Okay. What about cloud computing? Dr. Jarrah, what's your opinion on cloud computing?
Well, before giving that, I want just to mention two messages that in Jordan, in universities and in most of the ministries, we are reactive rather than proactive. We have some strategies in some places, but usually we put these strategies aside and we execute without looking at the strategies. The mobile internet users are growing exponentially, so whether we like it or not, we have to be prepared in schools and universities to this case. Now, regarding the cloud computing issue, I think cloud computing is an excellent opportunity for Jordan, for the Ministry of Education as well as for universities, because it will reduce the cost of maintenance and the cost of the support. It has a different licensing model. Therefore, I can see that cloud computing will have many solutions for our problems.
Would that be public cloud or private cloud?
Well, we can start from private clouds, because or hybrid clouds. Definitely not. We cannot start at this stage with public clouds.
Any reasons why?
Because until now we are being facing in public cloud with security and privacy issues, which are the main challenges in public cloud computing.
So public clouds are bits still foreseen as
in terms of security and privacy.
Secure. Dr. Salem, yes, please.
But let me switch to Arabic, please, to make some equalizing.
Actually, I would like to speak in Arabic in order to clarify myself better. We should provide an iPad for each student. Why? Because the educational process right now is being concentrated on the student, not on the teacher, because this iPad would go with the individual student to the house and will always be working on the broadband. So this facility or this tool will help the student to work better. I think that the maintenance problem would fade away if we put that in mind, and the money that is being wasted on maintenance, since the school right now is having only a table and a chair for each individual student instead of maintaining the computer of the student. But also should be considerations for other aspects. It should be integrated with the whole system. The school infrastructure also, we are talking about the databases, we are talking about the schools, we are talking about sustainability, because it's not important only to bring the broadband and put it on the the portal or the port of the school. But it is very important to have the network inside and to have the sustainable networking between all the educational system. This is not only for the provider, it's all for the educational system. Also, the best computer or the best tool also with the cloud system, the cloud computing. I'm not talking about the private or the public, but I'm talking about the cloud in general. But this is very important. We should not go to any solution for the providers because we should have our cloud farm that needs power and communications, but it is a must. And the last thing that I would like to talk about is that this pad that I am talking about in Egypt, we are capable, we have the market, we have around 20 million students in the schools, and we have more than 2 million students coming to the schools every year. So we are talking about having $75 per pad, and this should be supported by the government. Maybe this is the time that we should have our own pads for the educational system. I think that we should finish very soon the last question in order to sum up or to wrap up this discussion. Dr. Jarallah Al-Ghamdi, we know that the Ministry of Education in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has won a lot of prizes internationally and locally and from the Saudi Arabia itself regarding the solutions presented by the Ministry of Education. First of all, we would like to say congratulations on all the prizes you have won. And we know that there are so many efforts being made in order to reach this stage. But the question is, what is the importance of the infrastructure in general? Is it the preparations that are being deployed in the technology of the teaching process, the positioning of the country itself among the states on the regarding the ranking and the overall position of the countries. All of these things that are happening with the countries on the international level within the last 5 years. Do you think that all these efforts and the solutions and the results are coming? Do they have an effect on the effect or readiness of the country itself? Actually, this is thanks to God to all this for all this outcome that we have come. Next week, actually, we have another appointment with an international prize. We are not going to declare the name of it until we have it. But thank God we can say that this is a fruit of our project and the efforts. We are working on a certain methodology that is being limited or concentrating on developing these projects. The other thing is that the Ministry of Education in our country has contribution in training of 75% of the international evaluations that are affecting the position of the country on the international rank. Undoubtedly, the contribution of the Ministry of Education is very important to elevate the level of the education in the country and to the preparations made for the students and the teachers inside the country and the parents as well. What is left to say? Undoubtedly, the preparations are very important and they are enabling on a very high level. But it is very easy to build a system, but what is more important than that is to be really able to have it ready for the last user, whether the student or the teacher or the employee or the official. So the end user should be able to use these modern systems, and instead of having 2 or 3 weeks, to have it 3 minutes instead. And in 3 minutes instead. The most important thing of the effective development and the real change and the renaissance in the educational system. At the end, it's the service for serving the students and the teachers.
And I'd like to thank my guests, all of them, for a wonderful discussion. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone made use of this information. Enjoy the rest of the day, and welcome to Jordan again. Shukran.